Hi.
We are.
So, my wife and I have been following your teachings for like 5 years now, and our lives have changed immensely.
You think you're following us, but we're really following you. Because your questions are leading, always. Yeah.
So my question is has to do with some of Napoleon Hill's writings.
Yeah.
Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
There's one chapter that's devoted specifically to the mastermind.
Yes.
But in an earlier book of his, which is really a large expanded version of Think and Grow Rich, Law of Success.
Yeah.
He talks about the mastermind, but in more detail about his mastermind, his personal mastermind that he had.
Do you recall from what you were reading there about who some of those mastermind partners were?
Yes.
They were already reemerged into non-physical.
Some were. There were a couple that were not.
But we want to
Yes.
focus specifically there because
Okay.
what he was tapping into is the awareness that we've been talking about here today,
Right, exactly.
about these non-physical energies who have lived here, who are interested in what's going on here. His mastermind group were for a large part masters of industry, and
Yes.
they were those that were interested in the specific things that he was now talking about and teaching about.
Right.
So isn't it logical that he talked about them as being invisible, and he talked about them being ethereal, and in the vernacular that we're using here today, we would be talking about them being vortexual. They are in the vortex. They are non-physical. They are flowing with you. They have knowledge. And even more important than the knowledge that they hold, they have keen interest in what's coming next. Because you see, the thing that humans often misunderstand about non-physical in general, you think that non-physical is all evolved and perfect and sure, holding all the answers, and is now just delivering the answers to you in little puny flows every now and again when you get ready. And it isn't like that at all. It is that your questions are summoning those interested beings who have a basis of knowledge forward into the new. So they participate with you not because they know stuff that you don't know. They participate with you because they want to be in on the new knowledge that you are uncovering. Can you feel the difference in that?
Absolutely.
So it is the combining of thoughts and energies, and you being in this sweet spot where you get to be on the leading edge, where they blossom and explode into the physical, tangible evidence of the knowledge. Ugh, isn't that nice?
Yes. So my question is, I have a mastermind group, and most of them have returned to non-physical. And there are a couple that are still on this planet in physical form, but those that are in non-physical, there's this energy field that surrounds Earth that's called the ether, that Edison and Einstein called the ether. And it's supposedly, well, according to what they taught, was that it contains all the thoughts, feelings, and ideas that every physical being on this planet has ever experienced and felt and thought. And that is accessible to every human being. So when you tap into this mastermind, you just...
But we think that's muddy and confusing, and we'd like to clarify that. That book was written a long time ago, and so much has come forward into understanding since then. And so here's the way we would explain that. Let's take Jerry, for example. So Jerry, who was with Esther for 31 years and involved step by step, question by question with the expansion and the evolution of this work. His questions were the questions that formed the basis of the beginning of it. And then as more like you joined in, the base of questions became broader and the number of answers became more plentiful. And then Jerry made his transition into non-physical. So now that he is reemerged into non-physical, his interest in what is going on here is not less than, it is more than it has ever been before. But now he stands in a place of pure positive energy, first of all, of the absence of any resistance, but still interested in what's going on here in the expansion of this message. And so it isn't that everything that he ever felt or ever lived is now there with him. That isn't true at all. Any doubt isn't there. Any fear isn't there. Any worry isn't there. Only the pure positive energy. Only the knowing what you don't want and knowing what you do want is what that non-physical realm is all about, you see. And in fact, these emotions that you are describing, the reason that you feel them at all is because of your relationship with these who now are only feeling pure positive energy, only positive emotion. So we took a little aside from there, but what were you getting at with that?
So that kind of changes my question.
Yes.
The question I had was, when I access this mastermind, am I accessing their specific pure positive energy, or am I accessing the ether itself? Or is it both? That was my question, really.
Because law of attraction is already managing all of that. You can't get one without the other.
Okay, so it is.
As we were describing these discs of emotion earlier, so there's this pure positive energy. That's where your inner being and all of these that you're describing are. It's where Abraham is. It's where non-physical energy is, absence of resistance. So anything that is less than that, such as hope or overwhelmment or worry, is what humans are introducing to the mix. And to the degree that you introduce it, you separate yourself from that. So that's why when you are able to focus in a way that allows your vibration to naturally rise, as it will, then you have access to the whole of all of that. And it's so delicious when that pure intentionality, let's find other words, that pure interest is flowing to you and through you, and you're clear and open and not resisting it. That's when you really buzz. That's when you really feel the exhilaration of what you are all about. Because we all are buzzing all the time, but you don't always allow the buzz.
So I do this mastermind after I finish a chapter of one of Napoleon Hill's books, because I really resonate with that. But should I be doing it like on a more regular basis? Because it varies as to how soon I finish a chapter, depending on how much time I have to read. Do you have any suggestions? Should I be doing it more often, or?
Well, we want to talk about the power of the mastermind to begin with. There is a case to be made that there is a bit of lack of belief in your own empowerment when you are always reaching to others for power. It's sort of like believing that there's strength in numbers, when usually strength is diminished by numbers because the energy is more split up in numbers. It's a nice thing when you can co-create with someone who's on your wavelength. It's a delicious experience. But if you come together with another and you're just looking for power in numbers and the other is not in alignment, then there is often a diminishment. So we think that there's a misunderstanding, because you don't need numbers in order to have full empowerment. You just want to have alignment of your thoughts. And so it's a good thing to ask, are the people that I'm getting together with the mastermind, are they uplifting in nature, or am I feeling worse more of the time? Because it could go either way.
When I tap into this, I hear nothing negative. It's all positive. It's all very uplifting.
Yes.
So I believe that I'm benefiting greatly by it.
Yes,
But
we agree. So what you are describing here is not different than what we've been describing about getting into the vortex or getting into the receiving mode. And isn't it logical that when you get into the receiving mode, anyone who has anything beneficial to enhance the receiving mode that you're in is going to, by law of attraction, come forth. So the only question that is important is, how am I doing in terms of my ability to hear? Which is really more about, what did I do in preparation before? Really good. It's fun to update Napoleon Hill into the current vernacular. And make no mistake, present all the time and eager about it.
yes.
In fact, tell you a fun story. So Esther was visiting her parents. Her father had just made his transition, so she was visiting his corpse. And Jerry, who was not interested in visiting his corpse, stayed in the hotel and was just doing things that pleased him. And he walked across the street to a bookstore, and he found, because Jerry was very interested in years gone by in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Jerry had devoured it. He had read it hundreds of times and had taught courses about it. And so he's wandering around in this bookstore, and he finds a copy of Think and Grow Rich that looks like it came right out of the 1950s. The cover was very old-fashioned, and it said original manuscript. He couldn't believe his good fortune. So he bought it and went back to the hotel, and he also bought the current version of it. So now he took a highlighter, and he's going through it page by page, line by line, to see what was the difference between this now recently uncovered and newly published early version and the version that was published. And he discovered that Anything that had to do with ethers was edited out. Anything that had to do with non-physical had been edited out. So he was excited to see that and to document it for himself. But some years earlier, in fact, way back in the early 80s, when Esther was just beginning to receive Abraham, Esther was sitting in the audience, and Jerry was on the stage doing a presentation from the Napoleon Hill book. And he was telling a story from the book that was one of his favorites, and he was flowing with such enthusiasm. And Esther's in the back. Now, Esther is in full receipt of Abraham by this time. And so she's sitting in the back, and all of a sudden she feels an energy in her body unlike anything that she has ever felt. And she knows she's got Napoleon Hill. She can feel his enthusiasm for Jerry's presentation. She wants to do cartwheels up the aisle. She wants to lick his face. She wants to appreciate him in ways that he's never been appreciated before. She can feel this enthusiasm coming through her for this man who she's been married to for a while on this stage as he's telling this story. And so she could hardly wait for him to get off the stage. She could hardly wait for him to get off the stage so that she could take him backstage and tell him what was going on. And so the meeting was over, and she grabbed him and she went backstage and she says, Jerry, Napoleon Hill's here. Napoleon Hill's here. He wants to talk to you. He wants to talk to you. So they went out, sat in the car under the underpass, and Napoleon Hill, in the same way that Abraham is visiting with you now, is talking with Jerry. Jerry is out of his mind with enthusiasm. And Jerry said, what would you do differently now? And he said, I would explain where this information is coming from. And Jerry said, why didn't you? And he said, because no one would believe it. The book wouldn't have been published. He said, as it was. Now, this was years before Jerry found the confirmation. As it was, I had to edit so much of what I wanted to say out before they would even publish it, because the world, they did not believe, was ready to hear it. So on it goes. The weird is always out there on the leading edge, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.